Hello, welcome to the Mandela Effect equals knowledge. In this video, I'm going to do a Google Earth video. We used to have a channel called Terrors in the Milky Way, and we concentrated considerably on Google Earth. And I also have another channel called Plurality of Earth, which I mostly do Google Earth because I really rely on this tool. It's awesome. Because it's in every reality and it's going to represent the earth in each reality, and it does it very well, so we can really trust Google Earth. And if you have any doubt in thinking that they're controlling and manipulating and changing things, well, you can look on any globe anywhere, a globe of any age and any library, any school, anywhere on this planet, and you will see an earth, globe representing, it'll look exactly like this, regardless of where you go. I know it's vastly different than what we recall, but that would, helps us. It definitely indicates we're in another completely different reality, with a completely different Earth. I mean, it's way smaller and totally different. I remember the Americas lining up, of course, like many of you do, but each of us, perhaps we don't all come from the same reality because our soul is fractured and splintered, and each portion is in a totally different reality. So your portion, the one that's watching this video, say, it may have come from a different reality. You may have a different recollection, like some recall a continent on the North Pole called Antarctica, like I do, and some others don't in their reality they originated from, because there isn't an Antarctica in their reality, even though they're in realities that have a continent called Antarctica. We're in all the realities. That's the thing that's really amazing. But we'll originate, many of us didn't come from the same exact reality, so we're going to have different recollections. And the thing that always really gets to me is, even though this is vastly different, it's still unusually similar looking to the Earth that I recall, but yet totally different. And this is the area that I used, in the previous videos, I always got a lot of static about because people don't recall it the way I do and tell me that I'm wrong. And I'm trying to reply and say, no, my memory is very reliable, and try to explain to them that they simply came from another reality with a different orientation and layout and whatnot of the United Kingdom. This area is so amazing to me, especially like Denmark. I recall it being in Scandinavia, and Germany being landlocked and only had access to the Baltic Sea. Not the North Sea like it does here. There's so many differences, but yet it didn't really seem to change history that much. There was obviously variations and differences in the battles of World War II because of the geography differences in each reality, but the outcome remained the same. Same with the United Kingdom. This was, or Britannia or Britain, depending on what reality you're in. This is vastly different from what I recall. Now, you're not, some of you may not have the same recollection, but that doesn't mean that one of us or other is wrong. We just simply originated from a completely different reality, even though they were from the same, outer reaches of the Sagittarius arm. There's obviously multiple realities out there, just as there is in here in the Orion inner arm or Orion spur, depending on what reality you're in. But this is the area I wanted to go over, and the reason I have it on the Mandela Effect equals knowledge channel instead of the Plurality of Earth is because this is something that gives us knowledge. Now, personally, first of all, let's go over how I recall Britain. Again, you may not recall it the same, and this is why I don't have comments, because I want to talk freely about it without worrying about what people think. Now, obviously, I used to get a lot of static when I brought this up because people would say, no, you're wrong. Ireland was always its own island and things like that. And then, like I said, you try to explain to them, no, your recollections different than mine, it doesn't mean either one of us is wrong. It just means we came from a different reality, even though we're at all of them. We've always been in this reality. We had no idea. And the reason we know that is simply because we're here and we've always been here. Our friends and relatives ain't saying, hey, you popped out of nowhere. Where'd you come from? Or you seem different or something. That everybody looks at me like I'm exactly the same, which would imply that I've always been in this reality and I've always had a soul. But, so what happened to the soul that was in this replica version of myself when my soul portion entered it? It's simply in another replica version of myself and doing this video at the same time. Every replica version of myself that's been sharing my soul in every reality since the day I was born is doing this video in their reality. And it's going to be in different terms. Okay, so let's before we get into the what knowledge we're gaining from this, I want to go over how I recall the United Kingdom, or it was actually called Britain, the one I call. But anyway, it was orientated like this, the whole island, going from northeast to southwest, and then of course here when you hit north, true north, it's the orientation is almost opposite. And then also in the reality that this portion of my soul originated from, the Ireland was part of the main island. And Wales was an isle. They called it the Isle of Wales, just like the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man seems to be in every reality. But Wales was an island as well in the reality I recall. Ireland was part of the main United Kingdom island. And it was Scotland that was separate and its own island. Because I remember, not only do I remember seeing it on maps and atlases and globes, and again, our memory's not faulty, and some of you may have a different recollection. So, but that doesn't mean anything. It just simply means you came from a different reality than I did, even though we're at all of them. But I recall Scotland being its own island, and I remember in the movie Braveheart, they had to cross the strait, between Scotland and Britain. And they had trouble because the people they trusted in getting the boats to make a landing into London or Great Britain reneged on them. But they still managed to get across and attack York, Wallace did. But that just goes to show the conflict between these three. That's another weird thing. Here's this small island group, and there's three totally different cultures there. That's crazy. The Irish, the Scottish, and the Brits. Three totally different. And I always wondered how could that be, especially like the Irish and the British, because in the reality I recall they were part of one island. And I can almost see why Scotland was its own entity, because it had its own island in that reality. But here, it makes sense that the Irish are separate from the British because they have their own island. But like I said, in the reality, I recall where this portion of my soul originated from. I always wondered, even as a young man, I always wondered why this little area. First of all, why would they have three different, completely different societies in this one little area? It always confused me. But experiencing the Mandela Effect, it starts to become clearer, because it's even though each reality is totally independent and separate, including our soul portions that are in the replica versions of ourselves in each reality, they're still connected, constantly connected. That's important to keep that in mind because of that quantum entanglement. Even science is starting to realize that when they do those, split those protons and those experiments, they realize that it doesn't matter how far the split protons are from one another. They're going to react to one another instantaneously. Doesn't matter how far. And they've even come to realize that it could be across the universe and it would still react like that. But of course, we're dealing with the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, and the realities within that. That's a whole different topic there. But this is starting to make sense to me now. Why there's three totally different, uh, you know, totally different societies, but yet so close together within 500 miles square. 600 miles this way, 500 miles this way. It's such a small area, but yet there's three completely different societies, and it always confused me. But again, now that I'm experiencing the Mandela Effect, it makes sense. I could see why Ireland was totally separate, different than the British. But in the reality, like I said, I recall it didn't make any sense because they were one island. And it made sense that the Scots were separate because they had their own island. But here it doesn't make sense because they're part of the main island. But again, now, the Irish that live on their own island here have no idea that they also have, exist in realities where it's the part of the main island. That in Irish army, of citizens, if you will, were just constantly battling all through. Like I remember in the 70s and 80s, there was always, fire bombings and conflict, because they wanted their independence, and you could see why, because they're an independent island. But didn't make sense to me in the reality I recall, because they were part of the main island. It's like, why can't they get along? What's going on? Uh, and here too, here, like the movie Braveheart, for example, they didn't even have to stage in that landing that they did across the strait here that separated Scotland and Britain in that reality. But they didn't show it that much in the movie, and it makes sense. I thought that would have been that was an interesting part and aspect of Wallace's, incursion into Britain, was he had to cross the strait, and they didn't elaborate on it that much in the movie. And I always thought, wow, I wonder why. Well, because they were making the same movie in these realities where they didn't even have to worry about that, because there is no strait separating Scotland from United Kingdom in this reality. But that's what's interesting, is that the geography varied in each reality during those conflicts, but the conflicts, ultimate outcome of the conflicts remains the same in every reality. Because of that quantum connection, isn't it incredible? Even though in the reality where Wallace had to cross the strait, he got the people that were supplying the boat for him reneged on him, but he still managed to get across and do his deed. Of course, they were oblivious that they had, versions of themselves in other realities sharing their soul, making the same conquest, and without having to worry about crossing a strait. So that's very interesting when you think about it. But again, the Mandela Effect is making it clear as to why there's three totally different societies in this one small little area. It makes sense now, why there's conflict there all the time, and why Ireland wanted its independence and Scotland wanted its independence, which they have now, of course. But the history has proven, that there's always been very, very, bad, long conflicts that lasted centuries between these three separate, complete entities, even though they're all together. In summer, like I said, this is, the Ireland was part of the main island, and they thought that the whole island was theirs, and of course the British thought the whole thing was theirs. That's why, here it makes sense because they're separate, but in the reality I recall, it didn't make sense because they were connected. Where were they going to draw the boundary? And then it was very, it's confusing to me, but now it makes a lot of sense. It's understandable why Irish wanted their independence and why Scotland does. But again, no doubt, when I was looking into it and wondering and pondering about it in the reality I recall, no doubt this replica version of myself with its original soul portion, was wondering the same thing but different. Wondering why Scotland would be in such conflict and where are they going to draw the boundary line and things like that, because they are part one island. You know, so that's interesting. To basically yet another thing I've always wondered about that's been answered by what we're experiencing with the Mandela Effect. Now it all makes sense, because again, they're all the realities are connected on that quantum level. All our souls are connected to our other portions of our soul on a quantum level, and we're unaware of it because it's all subconscious. Because that's what this Mandela Effect's all about, is our soul. It's a very spiritual thing. It's our soul portions, our soul being splintered and fractured. And it's still like some people, that's why I don't have comments, because I get a lot of hate from this, when I say, no, again, it's not me saying it and telling you. It's the Mandela Effect showing us. It's quite obvious that our soul is splintered and fractured. Because again, this replica version of myself that I'm in right now has always been here. It always had my soul. It made the same decisions that I made in my reality that I recall. So that proves that, our soul is splintered and fractured. And also, quite obviously, each portion is very independent, as though it's its own. So that's why you get a lot of anger from people that say, I have one soul, And that's, well, yeah, you do. That's just because it's splintered and fractured doesn't mean it's multiple souls. It's just portions of a one whole being, you. So yes, it is one whole soul, you, but it's splintered and fractured throughout the entire Milky Way galaxy. That makes it just so incredible. It's revealing that our soul is remarkable. Think about it. I had no idea that I lived in a reality where Ireland was separate from the main island and Scotland was connected. I had no idea. This replica version of myself had no idea that it had a portion of its soul some 75,000 light years across the galactic center on the outer reaches of the Sagittarius arm on a Sagittarius super Earth, where this whole area is totally different. Like I said, I remember Denmark being part of Scandinavia. Normandy I studied extensively. The D-Day landings in World War II in 1945, June 5th and 6th. That whole thing happened in every reality. They were set to do it on June 5th, and of course the weather stopped them, and that happened in every reality, which proves the weather is even parallel. And this, I remember, Normandy being like this, the shores of Normandy being north and south, vertical, virtually plumb line vertical. And here it's like east and west, totally different. So they had to make the landings and come down straight south, then head east. And I recall they made the Normandies in the reality I recall. They just landed and went straight east, But even though the logistics was different in each reality, the outcome was the same. And they had to do it on June 6th because of the weather in every reality, regardless of the geography and the logistics, which were tremendous, amazing logistics in each reality. It's amazing they were even able to pull it off, if you think about it, especially now knowing that there's geographic differences in each reality they had to deal with. Of course, they were oblivious of that. They were dealing with whatever they had to do in each reality, totally unaware that they were blending in with other realities across the galaxy on giant Earths where the geography was totally different. Europe, and not just Europe and the United Kingdom, but everywhere. But this one I want to concentrate, again, where are we getting the knowledge? I mean, personally, a lot of questions were answered why there was so much conflict in this area for centuries. And now it makes a lot of sense because the realities varied and, and they are separate entities in certain realities and together in others. But so naturally, there's going to be conflict from cultures that are completely different. The Irish are, you know, they even have a different accent. The Scots, and between the Brits and Ireland, but yet they're all in just the same little area. That's always amazed me, and it's just so that's what we learn. We understand why, or personally, I learned. Again, I'm not telling you this. The Mandela Effect showing us that's why this is an area of conflict, and perhaps that's no doubt why Great Britain became so powerful. It's just amazing. Everything starts to fall into place and make sense. And again, I can't wait to. It's because it's always excited me about how, especially since the Mandela Effect has revealed these things, just how different the battles were in World War II, and because of the geography, but yet in every reality the outcome is the same. And so many things are being answered by the Mandela Effect and what it's revealing, and that's the real important thing. And I'm certain that's exactly what the Mandela Effect is supposed to be doing. It's showing us what life has always been about when we had never known about it. We're being shown by the Mandela Effect what life is all about now, and questions that we've always wondered about are being answered. It's just even like I can. I just spend the time in this area. I mean, you can go to any area and spend 30 minutes talking about it, and understanding why there was so much conflict and friction between nations. And this one was the one that always got me. Why are the Irish? Why is the Irish so different than the Brits when they're together in one island? Same with the Scottish, but yet all three of them are completely different from one another, hardly related at all. It's incredible. In fact, they hate each other, even though some of the people in Ireland helped out Wallace in his attempt to conquer Britain. They helped, a little bit because they were together. They were arch enemies with Britain. But still, they really had no association other than that with each other, and they're totally different people. It's always amazed me, but now, it makes sense. I'm trying to divert into another area, which is so easy to do. Again, I could spend a half hour talking about Normandy, in Denmark, in Germany. It's crazy. I recall it being totally landlocked, or at least, had no access to the North Sea whatsoever. And this wasn't a border change after wars and things like that. They may have changed it a little bit, but Germany during World War II in this reality had access to the North Sea. And it was always just the Baltic Sea. And then they couldn't get through the straits because Britain had so much power with their navy that they controlled all the accesses in and out of the Baltic Sea to the North Sea. So Germany had to conquer France, so they can get, their U-boat bases going. But here they had no problem getting to the North Sea, But again, it made no difference. The outcome of that war was exactly the same in every reality. So that's our lesson for today. And again, it's not me telling you. It's the Mandela Effect showing it. And it's, again, I'm sorry about the no comments because I know most of you have nothing but wonderful things to say. And I appreciate that and I love you all. But I'm very sorry I can't do the comments because there's so much hate. And for some reason, I get a lot when I talk about this. Because people don't recall it that way in their reality. Well, that's because their reality was different, that's all. A reality where they originated from is not the same reality where I originated from, even though we're at all the realities. I know that sounds crazy, but that's just exactly the way it is. It's showing us that our soul is splintered and fractured, and each portion is fiercely independent. And we're never going to be able to uh, mingle in with our other soul portions. They were created, splintered, and fractured, and they will remain splintered and fractured. That it's Mandela Effect is showing us that that's what life is all about. If we didn't, have this quantum connection with God knows how many other replica versions of ourselves and portions of our soul, we wouldn't even be able to breathe. That's essential. And it's not just human souls, it's every soul of every living thing is splintered and fractured. Everything, every atom that makes up even inanimate objects is parallel. It's amazing. Everything manufactured from the earth is parallel. And everything we have is from the earth, including our bodies. But that's explains a lot, doesn't it? I mean, why there's so much. Maybe some of you didn't really care or wonder about it at all, but I always wondered what's going on with Great Britain, But again, now it makes sense. It's clear to me. And the Mandela Effect is showing us all. So with that, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk at you later. Love you.